Welcome to another edition of the College Football Unfiltered. The guys and I are back for another episode here on the Rock Pile tonight. Lots to talk about. I didn't have it on the agenda, but we got to sneak it in the agenda. We'll kick things off. We'll talk Sharon more, the news from Michigan last night that came out. And as a Michigan fan, I would say I am extremely, extremely disappointed and embarrassed by what happened. But we'll talk Sharon more. We'll talk playoffs. We'll get into the game, the Michigan-Ohio State game, and much more here. We'll give our picks, the opening round, the playoffs. It'll get started here in another week or so. So lots to talk about with the guys. We'll bring them on, and we'll get their thoughts here tonight and much more. So let's bring the guys on. Gentlemen, what's going on?
Coach.
How's it going?
Coach, you would have thought that we had to talk for.
Yeah, I am extremely, extremely, extremely disappointed. I think somebody put the post up in our little chat last night, and I said, "You got to be kidding me!" So I'm on Facebook. I'm looking everywhere for the news, and you get the news on Sharon Moore and Steve Buss. I'll say this, and I'm not just saying this because of the news that broke, but I thought they would have probably gave him one more year. Let's say the situation didn't happen last night. I thought he had probably one more year to get into the playoff, to turn things around, because obviously 8-4, 9-3 isn't going to cut it if you miss the playoffs at Michigan. A lot of people are saying they wanted him out. All the stuff leaked last night, and I'm not sticking up. I think it's horrible, the news that came out. But what were your thoughts when you saw it?
I mean, I think like the rest of everybody. I mean, I was definitely shocked. When I first saw it, I didn't know the details. I just saw that he was fired, right? So my initial reaction was like, wow, they waited a little bit longer than I would have thought. They were definitely planning on making a move due to performance, right? And so then obviously the more I read, I think, my immediate, I guess my second thought was the timing around National Signing Day, it immediately started to stink, if that makes sense, right? The more I started to think about it, I had a really hard time believing that they just found out about this and they were reacting quickly to get rid of the football coach. But so, like you said, Rock, it's sad, it's gross, and really the ones I think I feel the most bad for is obviously his wife and his young children. I mean, I don't think we could definitely, and I'll take my shots at more in the Michigan program, but those are definitely innocent bystanders that now have, they got to carry this as well, which is the most unfortunate part.
Jake, what were your thoughts when you first saw it come out last night?
Well, it's the same as C-Bus. It's like you're double checking everything because there's so many missed posts out there of, hey, he's getting here, going fired here, like just random stuff. And then it's like, then it comes through on ESPN. And then the worst thing is, like, I think almost an hour later or 30 minutes was like, he's in custody. And it's like, holy cow, like this thing is much more than that. So they must have pretty good substantial evidence of all this stuff. And, you kind of deep dive into it, and it's just like, it's shocking. And unfortunately we kind of see it in the coaches world and even in the business world with that whole YouTube concert and everything. And It's just sad for his family, obviously, and puts a black eye on the program. And that's tough, because you always see Michigan as a top 5 program, and, elite coaches have come out of there, and now this has a major black eye on the program.
Yeah, and again, when I saw it, the first thing that came to mind was I had to make sure first it was even true. But it's an embarrassment. I think the whole situation, I mean, you can go back to the Jim Harbaugh, and you want to go back to the cheating thing. And, I think at some point, Ward Manuel, I heard news that he was out at Michigan. They got rid of him. And then I heard that he wasn't out at Michigan. He was still involved in this. I'm a firm believer that I think he's got to take some responsibility for this as well. I think the university really should get rid of him. And, I keep hearing a list of these candidates, for Michigan. And for me, guys, you keep hearing the same names: Kalen DeBoer, Jed Fish. You hear all the same guys that basically were up for all these other jobs. I heard Jesse Minner, and I'll say this: there's no way Michigan can bring back Jesse Minner. As great as defensively, he's doing a great job in the NFL, and he was part of those defenses with Harbaugh. You can't bring anybody back from the Harbaugh era. You can't do it. I don't care what anybody says. You can't do it. and he's got a no-show cause, I think, until March or April. So maybe that's out of the picture. I'm going to throw you 2 names. And I heard these 2 names tonight coming home from work, and I said, I'll think about them. Dabo Sweeney's name got thrown out there, and Jimbo Fisher were 2 names that I hadn't heard of, C-Bus. I've heard a lot of the usual suspects, the names that were thrown out here for the job, and those were 2 that I heard later tonight, and I was like, yeah. I don't want Brian Kelly. I keep hearing Brian Kelly because of the Michigan ties. I do not want him at all. You keep hearing Kalen DeBoer. You keep hearing Marcus Freeman's name came out and Kenny Dillingham, all these names. And I said, maybe Dabo? I don't know. Jimbo Fisher was a hell of a recruiter. What'd you think?
I mean,
any names
you got to
aren't part of those names?
No, I mean, I heard Jimbo Fisher this afternoon as well, and I kind of stopped for a second and said, man, like I don't think that necessarily fits, but I'm with you. I think recruiting, I think honestly, Rock, you have to find you're going to swing for the fences. You're Michigan, you got plenty of money. You got to make every call and make them tell you not interested, right? So I firmly expect them to go hard after all the names that we heard them there. But I do think you got to have a coach that is going to want to reset the culture there. I'm a belief right now it's a culture problem. Right? You brought up the cheating thing. We can say anything we want, but I mean this goes back to the COVID, the dead period recruiting violations that Harbaugh had. You have the Matt Weiss federal indictment. You have it's just a litany of issues over the course of the last 6-7 years. And I think we all know that the details of the Moore thing is just going to get more cloudy and worse before it starts to go away. Because I think the next question is how long did Michigan know? And did Manuel sit on this? There's numerous reports that they knew, that there was indications that they asked questions back in the summer and Moore denied the allegation. And then now that the season didn't go how they wanted it to go, this could be this is their opportunity to move on from the head football coach. So I think if you're a potential candidate, let's use DeBoer, let's use any of those guys that currently have an existing job. That's it. Yes, Michigan on the surface sounds great. It's Michigan. They won a national title 2 years ago. Like it's there. But I think if you look behind the curtain, right, I think you're going to. I think they're going to be surprised at who's going to be willing to take that. You do need a culture. You need a culture reset. I personally think Fish from Washington makes the most sense for Michigan. I think he's been a culture resetter everywhere he's gone. I think he knows, obviously, from his time at Michigan, he knows the program. And I think he can recruit. He kept Washington afloat right after DeBoer leaving. He's developed quarterbacks. So I am a believer. If I was going to Vegas, he'd be my guy. I put money on today at 8:10 at night on Thursday.
So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you with a lot of that stuff. It's just you hear the same names. You hear the Kalen DeBoer, and everybody says, "Well, he's not happy at Alabama." And I did hear that some of this stuff from in-house people knew about this, and they were already kind of sourcing coaches, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, anticipating something like this was going to happen. I keep hearing Marcus Freeman's name. I don't know how involved Marcus Freeman was in the decision to not play, a bowl game, but maybe Marcus Freeman says, you know what? If we don't ever join a conference, I don't want to go through this again. If I go somewhere else with a chance to win. I mean, if you take all the jobs that were open, I mean, you can throw out all these scandals at whatever you want. It's still the University of Michigan that has a shit ton of money. It's other than the LSU job, I'd argue and say it's Michigan and LSU are the 2 best jobs that were open. With the NIL in the transfer portal, somebody's going to come in. Somebody kept saying, "Hey, Rock, this is going to set Michigan back a few years." I'd say I would agree with that, but then I would disagree with it because, again, whatever coach comes in is going to hit the transfer portal. You got to try to keep some of these recruits. Bryce Underwood ain't going anywhere, according to what his contract says with money-wise, so I don't see him going anywhere. But I think for me, it's like all these coaches' names, it's the same names. and they keep saying, well, Michigan's got to hit a home run. Penn State's got to hit a home run. Who the hell's out there? Like, who are you going to get? It's the same guys, the same names that we heard for the Penn State job. If I'm the University of Michigan, I probably call Matt Campbell at Penn State and I say, whatever the buyout is, if you're interested, I'll buy it. Kalen DeBoer, if you're interested, I'll buy the buyout. Clark Lee that just signed at Vanderbilt. Hell, I'd even go after Cignetti, Steve-Bus, and say to Cignetti, listen, whatever you just signed extension-wise, I'll pay it to have you come to the University of Michigan. So it'll be really interesting. But, you know, my brother-in-law and people that are actually from the state of Michigan, the whole thing where they'll say, and I don't know if my brother-in-law would agree with this or not, maybe, well, he probably will text me, is when they said, you know, Michigan needs a Michigan guy. I'm not one of those guys that say Michigan needs a Michigan guy. I've never been a guy to say that. But I will say that I'm okay with if it was a Kenny Dillingham, a young guy that won at Arizona State with less resources, a Matt Campbell that won with less at Iowa State. So I'm okay with those guys, you know, coming to Michigan. And I mean, hell, Cbus, Ryan Day was an offensive coordinator. Never had a head job. You know, fell into a great situation where Ohio State was winning and had a good relationship with Urban Meyer, and he got the Ohio State job. So the fact that you need a Michigan guy or you need this big name, again, guys, I don't think you need it. I think there's good coaches out there. You don't need the big splash.
Do you think I've heard Charles Woodson, you think they would try outside the box, or
I don't see that. I don't see that.
I think you need somebody that at least understands the NIL current era, right? I think that's the hard part now is to bring some. If you brought it outside the box hire, Jake, like I think you need somebody that that's in the current landscape that understands the movement. Yeah. Rock, I agree. I agree. I don't necessarily think it has to be a home run hire. I think it has to be who's the right fit, right? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a name, a DeBoer that all of a sudden was like, oh, well, you poached somebody from Alabama and they came. Like, yeah, that sounds good, and that probably helps maintain the existing class. But the reality is that you need, like I said, you need a culture starter, changer, stabilizer, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? You need somebody that's going to come and be that calming influence that's going to settle everything down, that's going to create a standard. And you're 1,000% right. Ryan Day was an unknown, other than we knew that he was the OC at Ohio State, and we knew that he had, had NFL experience, was good with quarterbacks. But we didn't know, as Ohio State fans, we didn't know all that we were getting into. And again, like I told you guys last week, it took time for Ryan to mature. That's the other hard part at these big schools, Ohio State, Michigan's, LSU's, things like that. The patience level of the alumni, and now when you throw in the NIL and these boosters putting up significant amount of money year over year to bring in players, as we saw with this coaching carousel, I referenced last week, we talked about $200 million that was spent in buyouts this year for coaching buyouts this year. The patience and the fuse is so short. I'm with you, Rock. Find the guy, Michigan man, who gives a rat's butt, right? Like, let's find the right guy that fits the program. As an Ohio State fan, I was disappointed that Jerome got fired because I wanted him there another year because I didn't think he was that great of a football coach. Do I think it can be a fail forward for Michigan? Absolutely, I do. I think that they can overcome this. They're too good of a program not to. But it's going to be a rocky road for a while, for sure.
Well, I think it was obviously when Harbaugh left, it was the easy plug and play. I think it's similar to the Ole Miss job with Pete Golden getting the Ole Miss job. Like, they never really did an official search. I was the guy behind the scenes that said, it's Michigan, post a job. You're going to get a lot of people that are interested in that job, right? If Ryan Day left, I mean, they're big jobs. This was like the first year, I think, in a long time, all these jobs that came open, they were huge jobs. Huge jobs. I can't remember a coaching cycle where we saw this many big time jobs. And now, I mean, I agree. Like, did they cover it up because of the National Signing Day? To try to keep recruits from leaving if they had heard about this. And I did hear there were a couple guys that left the program. But I don't want a hand-me-down. Go do a search. Take your time. Michigan's going to go play in the Citrus Bowl against the University of Texas on December 31st. And, if Kalen DeBoer's the guy, they're in the middle of a playoff run. So take your time. I don't think there's any need to rush because you already missed signing day. Right now, it's just going to be the transfer portal, whoever comes in.
Yeah, I think you can be patient, right? I think you can identify who your guy is. I think the scar tissue, I'm thinking for Michigan fans, right? I think if we talk to your brother-in-law, right? Like they are coming off of there is still Brady Hoke and Rich Rodriguez are not that far away from Michigan's fans' minds, right? I understand Harbaugh came in and stabilized things, but they did take two swings and misses at head coaches before they found Harbaugh, and then they were patient with Harbaugh. He didn't win for the first 4 or 5 years that he was, right? Yeah, exactly, right. So I do think that there is a little bit of a, oh man, if we get this wrong, if we get this one wrong, are we gonna go back to the 6-6, 7-5 era, right? And I do think that will cause them to slow the search down. And I do think that will cause them to do their due diligence, which is what you would want, I would imagine, as a Michigan fan.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So while we're on that topic, we will talk about kind of takes the emotion a little bit out of rivalry weekend with Michigan and Ohio State. Oh, that's the Big Ten championship. Hold on, let me scroll through my notes because I had it in the wrong order. Oh yes, I did have that. Sorry guys, let me pull it back up.
You're good.
There's the Big Ten title game, Indiana and Ohio State and C-Bus. I got to tell you, I hadn't really watched too much of Indiana the entire season. I saw some of them against Penn State, and I saw some of the highlights throughout the year. I really hadn't watched them start to finish. And one thing I'm going to say that I was really, really, really impressed with, and I want to get your thoughts, was they were a lot more physical than I thought they would be on both sides of the ball. As far as Ohio State goes, and I don't know, you can give us the language down in Columbus here with Brian Hartline. I don't think Brian Hartline called a really good game offensively for Ohio State. And Ryan Day, rightfully as the head coach in the conference, said, hey, listen, we're all part of the game plan. We all had say in it. He's the head coach. I just didn't like a lot of the different looks that he gave. I thought they were a little conservative on the missed field goal of 4th and 1. I said, he's going to go for it. 4th and 1, you're the number one team in the country. If you can't get a yard, then you shouldn't be the number one team in the country. But I didn't think he called a really good game, C-Bus. Do people down in Columbus, are they talking about that? Is it a distraction with him in South Florida? I wasn't impressed. I thought he tightened up a little bit.
Yeah, I think they're, let's start with the line of scrimmage. I totally agree with you. I thought Indiana, from a physicality standpoint, especially their defensive line, I thought played really well rushing the passer. I thought it was the first time that I had seen in the second and third quarter, the first time I had seen Sayin really with his head in a blender, right? You could just tell he didn't know what he was seeing. They did a good job of rolling their safeties, I thought, in mixed matching some coverages there. And he got pressured, right? I mean, Rock, we talked about it from the Michigan game the week before where he said Michigan couldn't come close to laying a hand on Sayin, and then in Indiana definitely changed that dynamic. But from a play calling perspective, absolutely. Look, Ohio State has not been great in the red zone all year. It's been a problem that really they've overcome because they've just bullied the hell out of just about everybody they played. But they ran 13 and 14 personnel down inside the 10-yard line. They had 4 tight ends on the field without Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith down there. So yeah, I was questioning the play calling. That's been a talk down here. It didn't feel, it didn't feel, at times it felt conservative. At times it felt too aggressive. I thought the third down plays in both goal line or both situations, Ohio State's down. The fourth quarter, they get the ball twice. They go 6 minutes down the field. They go 5 minutes down the field. Both put themselves in touchdown. They're going to take the lead in both of those situations. And they couldn't get done. They went for it on 4th and a long one. The drive at the start of the fourth quarter, Sayin doesn't get it on the review QB sneak, which I thought was just a silly play call down there. If I'm gonna run it, I would have rather just handed it all off on 3rd down and 4th down and try to get a yard as opposed to trying to throw on 3rd and then QB sneak. And I think that's what influenced the field goal rock on the second drive is they went for it on 4th and 1 the drive before and they didn't get it. And so I think in Day's mind, I think he's thinking we better take the points and at least try to get to overtime, so then we can see if we can't go win the football game. And then your kicker shanks one or pull hooks one, looks like me on the third tee, right? So I think from that perspective, that was there. I tend to think, Rock, there was just so much going on in Ohio State the week leading up to that game. You had National Signing Day. You had Brian Hartline with the coach move. You find out that Penn State was pushing hard after Matt Patricia, who he ended up not going too deep into that conversation, but they pushed him hard. And then you had their top recruit in Chris Henry Jr., who because of the Hartline announcement, he ends up pulling back his commitment, and then goes through a 48 to 72 hour kind of flirtation with Oregon and USC before ultimately recommitting to Ohio State on McAfee's show Friday afternoon. So I don't want to take any credit away from Indiana. They deserve to win the football game. Mendoza made some throws that I thought were just on time, really good throws, clutch throws. But at the end of the day, do I think Ohio State coaching staff was locked into that game? It did not feel like it, especially on the offensive end. But again, great story for Indiana. How cool for Cignetti, how cool for that team. As an Ohio State fan, I hope we see him again in the Natty. I think it'd be great.
Jake, what'd you think of Mendoza? Again, this is the first time I really watched him play from start to finish. And, if you just sit back and you go off of numbers and you don't watch the game, I mean, Sayin was 21 to 29 for like 250, I think 258, a touchdown in the pick. Mendoza 15 to 23. I thought they both played well. The hit on Mendoza the first series, I thought he got knocked out of the game. I had told my wife, said, you're going to get lucky here. The starting quarterback's done for the game, first series of the game. But he made the big throw in the fourth quarter, late in that game, the big throw to Charlie Becker, the sophomore receiver. But what were your thoughts on watching Mendoza play?
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with him. I mean, I think it was a true test for both of them to fight for the Heisman candidate, to go for the Heisman Trophy. Getting hit that early and that often, it showed that he was composed throughout the whole game. And I think it helped that at halftime it was, 6-10. So anytime it was somewhat close, I think Indiana kept getting that more confidence. I think if Ohio State came out and smacked them in the mouth and got maybe up 2 touchdowns right away, that I think they would have probably backed down. But since they were hanging around, just built that confidence. And two, it's, Cignetti, I could see him be putting that bulletin board in there. First ever, you'll make history. We have more on the line. And, just that hungriness that, hey, we're right here close enough. And you can see it. And you can see it by the up front with the line, I know C-Bus said that he was worried about the run game of Ohio State, and I think that hurt him. I think they were under 75 yards rushing, if not lower than that, and I think that plays a huge part. Now, I do think that Ohio State could have took probably some more chances on those receivers on out there to make some plays, but also, like you said, I think they were holding back a little bit. They knew if Ohio State wasn't an all-be-all win, that, hey, we have to have the first seed. They've done it before where they've lost and ran the table, so it wasn't such a push that, hey, we have to win this game and we can hide some things for the playoffs. And so, hats off to Indiana coming out and making history.
I think Urban Meyer said it great. He said, this is what Cignetti's done at a program like Indiana that was one of the worst programs in the country for a long time. In basketball school, you can say that, right? I don't think anybody would disagree. To being 24-2 over the last 2 years, probably going to have the Heisman Trophy winner. They won the Big Ten. They're the top seed in the college football playoff. He said this is probably the greatest turnaround in college football history with what this guy's been able to do. And again, I still can't get it out of my head that the head coach at Indiana is going to turn down the jobs at Penn State, Auburn, LSU, and maybe Michigan, or maybe he leaves Indiana now and goes to Michigan. I don't know. But that kind of goes back to, and I'm not saying it's C-Bus because the score was 13-10 like the Michigan-Ohio State game last year, but that's kind of how I felt this game as it was going. Ohio State only ran the ball for 58 yards. Now, that doesn't give credit because when you look at it, I think Indiana had 5 or 6 sacks, and I think they had 7 or 8 tackles behind the line. So you throw that in there. But I thought, like you said, the 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets, I almost thought that it was like Ryan Day wants to go back to trying to beat Michigan, running the football and winning the game in the trenches versus let's get those receivers out there in space and let's throw the ball around the yard. Like, I know Bo Jackson's been better all year. They got the run game going. But again, when I think of Ohio State, when they're at their best, they're throwing the ball all around the yard. And Cardinal Tate, I think, only had 4 or 5 catches. That's kind of what it reminded me of.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, again, short yardage for Ohio State is a conundrum for them. It just has been. But Jackson has been great. He's not your ground and pound guy. They have C.J. Donaldson that they brought in, transfer from West Virginia, who they had been using as their kind of ground and pound back. They have a backup quarterback in Leakin Kleinholtz, that kid from South Dakota. He's a little bit more athletic quarterback. Dave's brought him in at times, down in the goal line to either run just straight option or QB sneak. He didn't go to that. I felt like I felt like the play call was like a down off. I was talking to Pops on Sunday after the game. In that last drive I go to, it's 3rd and 1, and before they shank the field goal, and they bootleg Sayin out, which I had been screaming for, which they finally did in the 4th quarter. They bootlegged him out and they threw to the tight end. They hit for 2 chunk plays to get him to move the pocket a little bit because Indiana was pinning their ears back. So then they roll him to the strong side of the field. They have one guy on the route, and that's Jeremiah Smith. There's nobody else to throw to. I mean, there was a one guy route, and I'm going that you have, it's a 50-50 chance at that point. And Indiana, of course, their attention is going to go to number 4. He's the best offensive player in the country, right? So I just didn't feel like schematically it made sense to what they were trying to do. I didn't get the impression, Rock, that they were trying to prove that they were more physical, which is what I thought they were trying to do with Michigan. But I definitely feel like they were searching for what that go-to play. And then I would add, they ran a play action, beautiful touchdown pass that they got called back on a penalty down there in the goal line, which I was screaming for all day, where they had the tight end leak out that they threw for a touchdown, and they got it called back for a penalty, right? So look, those balls, everything bounced. A lot of things bounced Indiana's way. As when those games are that close, that's the way it goes, right? Sometimes you make a play, sometimes you don't. 2 big plays in that game. The Mendoza touchdown pass, beautiful, read the blitz, great throw, great defense, made a great play. And then the 3rd down throw, down the sideline, he dropped that ball in a bucket. Do I think the DB needed to reroute that receiver off of the line of scrimmage? If you're playing man coverage like that and Patricia brings the house, you got to at least put a hand on the guy. So he got free release, which drove me crazy, but still great throw. So, I mean, tip your hat.
Guys, the other games, and we'll get back to this Ohio State, because I don't think this is going to be the last time we see Ohio State, Indiana. I think there's a really good chance we can see them meet up and play for the national championship, which I think would be fantastic to see part 2. A lot of eyes were on, the ACC. Duke beats Virginia 27-20 in that game. And, it was a great game. I felt really bad for Tony Elliott, because I'm like, man, the guy did a really good job this year at Virginia. Just win the game, man. You're in the playoffs. And then, Manny Diaz thinks that he's going to do his pitch for a 7-5 Duke team to make the college football playoff. I'm like, dude, I know you're all about your team, but there's no way in hell you belong in the playoffs. But guys, the other game I just want to talk real briefly about, and then we'll get into your thoughts on the 12 teams that got in. I think right now, I don't think you want to see Georgia in the playoffs. I think they're playing really well right now. I think Gunnar Stockton's playing really well defensively. I think Kirby's got these guys playing like the Georgia team I think we all thought we would see to start the year. A lot of young guys. This game was really never close. And, I don't know what you guys think, but I think, this game, I was really surprised Alabama got in, and we'll talk about the playoffs and those teams, because that game, 28-7, I think it was 28-0 heading into the 4th quarter. And the game wasn't even close. Bama scored, I think, late in this one to make it 28-7. But right now, C-Bus, I think Georgia's playing as good as anybody.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, look, from a talent perspective, I think we all know that, and coach, right? I mean, Kirby's a great coach. Probably probably the best coach in the game. And I'm as big a Ryan Day fan as anybody, but I think, Kirby's got in there track record wise. But I thought it was just the interesting thing with that game was I thought Georgia's defense was just so much more superior. They were the best unit on the field outside of everybody to me as far as that's true. Georgia's offense, good, plodded along. Stockton's playing well, but Georgia's defense just suffocates you, and just absolutely the physicality. They wear them down. I think they held Alabama to like 210 yards, 209 yards across the entire game. They made. I think they forced Ty Simpson to go back to school for another year. I don't think he can come out. I think they rattled him. I think they rattled him that much to show that he's got a lot more. We talked about rushing game for Ohio State. I think Alabama had finished the game. Obviously, they had plenty of sacks, but they finished the game with negative rushing yards against Georgia. I just absolutely dominated Alabama. I know the committee, and we'll get into that, looked at it differently. I strongly disagree because I watched that game and my eyes told me what I needed to see. Look, Ohio State, if they're able to take care of the winner of A&M Miami, they're likely, they're going to end up playing Georgia. Strong possibility, and that's going to be that has the potential to be an all-timer for sure.
Jake, Gunnar Stockton's gotten better as the season went on for Georgia. He's been in some big games for them. And then I look across the other side and I said, I don't know what's happened to Ty Simpson at Alabama, because I thought he got off to a really good start. A lot of people were saying it was him and John Mateer, the quarterback at Oklahoma, that were probably your Heisman front runners at the beginning part of the season. And then I don't know if it's because Alabama really hasn't been able to run the ball. Seabus, you made a good point. Alabama had 16 carries for -3 yards. Against Georgia. So that really doesn't help the quarterback at all with no run game, Jake. But what's happened with him? He just hasn't looked himself.
Yeah, I know I came on, or last time I saw on the show, I was like, I have more faith in the Ty than the Gunner. But, I think Gunner's at his best when he's running the ball and throwing the ball, and he's a dual threat. And in that game, I think if I'm correct, he had over 10 carries and one of the leading rushers of his team, and just that threat of running and everything. And he was on point, passing the ball all over the field. Alabama watching it, it's frustrating because it's like, Georgia's a blitz-heavy team, and some of the stuff that they're running, it just doesn't make sense that he's holding on to the ball and they show a route, and it's like, why are you running a double move that's like a post corner? Like, the blitzes are coming. It felt like they didn't do many short stuff, pick routes underneath at times to help the quarterback, especially in the third and short or third and manageable. They were almost trying to take shots down the field, and he was throwing it up. And not having a running game, teams can pin their ears back and go, here you go. And he can move, but he's not a true dual threat quarterback. And, Alabama did have some drops that hurt them too, like they have in the last part of the season. And their two starting running backs are out, but, they were just getting beat up front. I don't know, no matter who you put back there, they weren't going to break all those break tackles back there, how Georgia was swarming the ball. So it's two different Alabama teams. When the first time you watched them play Georgia, they were clicking. I think they were spreading the ball around, taking quick hits, got on them early. And this time Georgia just basically smacked them in the mouth and Alabama did not get up. Now towards the end, he was pressing. I think it was 21-7 when they went for it on their own 20. That last touchdown. So yeah, they lost by 21, but if he was playing the game like what's his name at the Raiders that kick a field goal at the end of the game to get the point spread to 7, he would have punted away to say, oh, we only lost by 14, but
yeah, that was a little fishy, that ended of that game.
So I can't fault him for going for it on 30 and to give up the easy touchdown at the end of the game. So
watching the Alabama all year, and it's like I feel sorry for Kalen DeBoer because I think he is a really good coach. I think what he did at Washington, and I like the guy. He looks like a likable guy, but like every time they show him, he looks like he's so either pissed off or like mad or like disappointed and sad, saying, "Why the hell did I come here to Alabama?" Because every time they lose a game, I feel like they say, "Well, we need Nick Saban back." Like, we're going to throw him out. Now they're like, well, if he loses the first round in the playoffs, that's 4 losses for Alabama. Alabama hasn't lost 4 games in the last how many years? So I just feel sorry for the guy watching them. But I listen, I agree. I think it's going to be really hard for them to beat Oklahoma. That's really good defensively. They had their starting tackle out. Their 2 backs are out. They can't run the ball. And I don't know if you're going to just line up and throw the ball all over the yard against, Oklahoma in that defense. I don't see it. But, man, I just feel sorry for Kalen DeBoer. He just looks like he's a defeated guy. Guys, the other game, and then we'll get into –
it's the old adage, Rock, and then go to the next game. It's the old adage. You don't want to be the guy that replaces Nick Saban. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy that replaced Nick Saban, right? Any if you're replacing a big name, you don't want to be the guy that immediately we can put Jerome Moore in that conversation, right?
Yes.
Jim Harbaugh won the national championship. You don't want to be the guy. You want to be the guy that replaces the guy.
So, guys, the 12 teams comes out. Tulane gets in. We get to see them for the second time against a Lane Kiffinless Ole Miss team Ole Miss, I think it was like 44-10 the first time they played. A lot of questions. Miami getting in, Notre Dame being left out, Notre Dame saying they're not playing in a bowl game. They declined it. Before I get your guys' thoughts, just one thing that I thought about it was I didn't really have too much of a problem with the teams that got in. I don't have a problem with Tulane and James Madison based off of the criteria of how they got in. I do think they need to do something with those Power 4 teams, a criteria to say they have to hit this criteria or this metric for them to get in, because like Tulane or JMU are not good. They're 20-something point underdogs. Here's what I thought, and I knew it wasn't going to happen. Alabama didn't get penalized for losing the SEC title game. Right. And we said maybe they got to do away with these conference championship games because, these other teams get a bye week and, like Ohio State and Indiana, they were both in. So regardless of what happened, they were both in the playoff. Now you want to win a Big Ten title, but I think they'd rather win a national championship than a Big Ten title. So Alabama gets in. And then I said, BYU's got 2 losses. Both the Texas A&M, who's a number 3 or 4 team in the country. Those are the only 2 losses they had. Now they got beat up in the Big 12 championship game. So I'm not saying BYU should have gotten in, but I think they had an argument to say maybe we belonged in. And then of course everybody says, well, Notre Dame was ahead of Miami the whole year with these rankings when they came out. Now all of a sudden Miami jumps Notre Dame and Miami's in, and now everybody's saying, well, Notre Dame's got to get into a conference. Sebus, I'll start with you. Did you think that the committee got it right with the teams that got in? Should Notre Dame have been in there over Miami?
I think Notre Dame's a top 12 team in the country. I think they deserve to be in the playoff. I don't think that, this is my take, I don't think Bama deserves to be in the playoff. If I was ranking them, I would have had Notre Dame and Miami in the playoff, and I would have had Bama out. If you're going to, you said exactly what I said, Rock. If you're going to penalize BYU for getting mopped up in the Big 12 championship game to Texas Tech, you can't turn around and Alabama didn't even drop a spot. They stayed the exact same spot that they were. So you're telling me that, and Jake, you're right. Let's say they lost 21-7, but all 3 of us watched that game. Under no circumstance, after 8 minutes to go in the first quarter, did I think that Alabama was going to win that football. There was never a moment where I was like, man, Alabama's got a chance. It was clear that Georgia was the better football team all the way through. And that's exactly what the committee said about BYU. Oh, well, they didn't look good. They didn't look good in sustained stretches against Texas Tech. Like, I just feel like they're picking and choosing, again, to fit the narrative. I understand it's a TV show and Alabama brings a ton of eyes, but so does Notre Dame, right? And I said, look, I'll get into Notre Dame and how they've handled this post not getting in, which I totally disagree with, and I think they are acting as childish as I've seen a program act in a really, really long time. But if I was ranking them, I would have put Miami and Notre Dame in. I think the most perplexing thing to me is you do this week over week, and the first rankings, which was week 8 or week 9 into the college football season, well after Miami and Notre Dame have already played, and it was first week of the season. Miami wins. Miami's 18th and Notre Dame is 11th or 12th. in the first playoff ranking. So they had already ranked Notre Dame 6 spots ahead of Miami. We get to the end of the season and we go, well, now we have to pay attention to head-to-head, which I agree. I think you have to be careful of head-to-head doesn't matter. But like I said, then let's just look at win-loss record. Alabama lost 3 games. They didn't look good in the conference championship. They kind of backed their way into the SEC championship, if we're being honest, and then they lost. I have a hard time keeping Bama in the 12 team with Tulane and James Madison. I'm with you too, Rob. They got to figure something out there. But based on the current criteria and format, if they're going to put those 2 teams in, I think Bama's. That's how I would rate it. Bama would have been the one outside of the top 12.
Jake, what'd you think? Do you think they got it right?
I think they got it right. I mean, the hard part is they came up with rules when the Pac-12 was still there and we had an extra conference. And so even last year with Boise State, they shouldn't have got the bye, but, being the next highest ranked conference. But now they're definitely going to have to change it because missing out on the Pac-12, we only have the 4 major conferences, and I think there should be a criteria of you need to be ranked at a certain number at the end of the year to be eligible for the playoffs. When it comes to those teams, I know Alabama got crushed, but also, if Texas A&M wins, they're not playing in that game. So they're sitting at home and they're not even part of the conversation of, are they close to Notre Dame? Or are they close to here? They're already pinned in and not penciled. When it comes between Notre Dame and Miami, I think that's where the committee got it wrong at doing, like Seabus says, early enough in the year that you put such a gap in between them. And as you see them creeping up, and with them not even playing in a week, that, hey, Miami jumps that high. Yes, I think when you put them side by side with the strength of record, strength of schedule, they are neck to neck. I think they're like one off each other of each one. I think I have the stat of, Notre Dame's 42 and Miami's 44. Strength of record 13, 14.
Yeah, pretty close.
And everything. And head-to-head does have to matter at some point. And, you want these teams to go out and schedule harder competition to show that, hey, some good games out there where, BYU, they had a great season, but I think they played Utah was their only ranked game there was other than playing Texas Tech. And so they had a modest schedule and that's even next year. It's funny. You see the stuff coming out for Notre Dame's schedule next year. It's even easier. It looks like, and I think they have if they're ranked in the top 10 or whatever, they're guaranteed to be in the playoff. They have that sign. So, I think there has to be a different format of how they pick teams and be more transparent to let the teams know this is what we're looking at. Here's our criteria. Does it matter who you beat? Like Alabama, they went on that stretch of beating 5 ranked teams in a row. Or is it who you lost to, with them losing to Florida State or, Notre Dame losing only to a ranked opponent, same with BYU. What does the committee look at more? What are they valuing more and come out and be transparent?
Well, you know what? I mean,
I think you're right. All right.
No, I was just going to say, so we all love March Madness and we all love when we see the 16 beat the 1 and we love to see the upsets. But I think the 3 of us can agree. I mean, college football is a lot different. You're not going to see, listen, maybe we'll see James Madison beat Oregon as a 20-something point dog. But I mean, last year in the playoffs, we saw blowouts, in that opening round. That no discredit to Tulane and, Coach Summerall that they got him in and they're going to go try to play Ole Miss again for the second time, which Ole Miss hammered on the first time. And I can't see that it's going to be any closer this time. Maybe it is. But I think college football is so much different because we want to see the upsets. But now, again, with the transfer portal and the way things are, we're not really seeing that anymore with these small schools, the JMU. So I think we're going to see eventually a Power 4 playoff and a Power 5 playoff where I think they'll have their own champion, whether it's you want to call yourself the Power 4 national champ or the Power 5 national champ. I really think that that's what it's going to come down to. Unless you put the criteria in where once you hit it, that now qualifies Tulane, JMU, and Navy to be eligible to get into the field. So I'm not knocking Tulane or James Madison. I don't really want to see it. Bob Chesney's off to UCLA. Summerall's off to Florida. They're still coaching. So who the hell knows, what's going to happen. But
the only thing I wanted to add, and Jake, you're right. The week-to-week rankings as the end of the season goes on, that is perplexing too, right? Like Jake, you said if Alabama doesn't go to the SEC championship game, they're sitting tight. But if you remember, I think Alabama was 11th or 10th going into the last week of the regular season. They beat a 5-win Auburn team. Close, by the way.
By 7,
close game. I understand rivalry game, but close game.
Yep.
They win that game, and they moved up a spot to 9 in that ranking. So I feel like some of the questioning I have is like, well, then how did beating a 5-win SEC team, I understand it's your rival, but how does that move you up a spot? Then you get run out of, then you get just dominated. Let's not say they got run out the field, but they got dominated in the SEC championship game and they go nowhere. And that's what I can't make sense of, is that I don't like I said, it feels like they positioned it exactly how they wanted it to the last week of after the regular season was over, to say, okay, regardless of what happens to Bama, they're protected, they're good. And I think that's why I say I would take Alabama out, because I just feel like they insulated them, and it doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with the C-Bus. I mean, I was even a little surprised to see Ole Miss moved up a spot without Lane Kiffin and not playing like they moved up a spot. So we'll see how it plays out. But I want to just get into these games to see who you guys like, and we won't pick the national championship and all the way through, because I'm sure we'll do another show or two by then. So I want to start with these opening round games. So this is a rematch again. Oklahoma got them the first time, right? Alabama, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is actually a 1.5 point favorite in this game. This is the winner's going to get Indiana. So I think Indiana's got a good path, because I think Indiana beats both these teams. But C-Bus, I'll start with you. Who you like in this game?
Man, so this is the best one. This is the best matchup for me as far as I'm concerned, because I have a hard time calling this one, because I think both teams have a serious deficiency, right? I think, as we talked about, Alabama's offense looks to be a little bit of disarray. They can't run the ball. Oklahoma's strength is their defense, really, really good defense. They fly to the football, great line of scrimmage. But Oklahoma's offense isn't that good either right now. Mateer came out great, but really hasn't been the same since the injury. They've struggled to score points on a consistent basis. And I think Alabama's defense is the strength of their team right now, right? And I think they're playing better than anybody else. So I say all that to say, when I can't make a determination, I'm gonna go for the home team. Tough to beat anybody twice, but let's throw in the DeBoer thing. Maybe he's ready to head to Michigan. So give me Oklahoma, low scoring. Let's go 20-17.
Jake, who you like?
Oh, I think C-Bus hit it right there, hit a home run with that, with both offenses struggling at times, and it's definitely frustrating, because you could see at times both offenses can fly around and score a lot of points. But lately, with the injuries and everything, they both have all been struggling, and both defenses are stout. I am a fan of Venables, being a Clemson guy and doing great things out there. But I'm actually leaning towards Alabama. I just think, with DeBoer possibly on the hot seat, I think he might come out with more a bit flashy stuff, kind of like how he was at Washington, being a little bit more creative possibly and throwing some different things at Oklahoma. But I think, like Siwa said, it's going to be a low scoring game. I think defenses, if someone gets a turnover and, the red zone that gives them a great field position, is going to be huge. And it could just come down to, the kicking contest of some field goals. So I'm going to go Alabama. I'm going to say 17-14.
Yeah, Nick, he's riding the SEC, man. You like Bama last week, you like him again this week.
Usually don't like the ground too much.
I know. Oklahoma wins this game. There's no way Alabama's going to win throwing the ball 30, 40 times against this Oklahoma defense, because Venables is going to get after you. I can see it 13-10, somewhere like that. I do think this will be probably one of the top two games in the opening round, but I'm going to take Oklahoma at home. I think 13-10, somewhere around there. So the winner of this one gets your Buckeyes, C-Bus. Again, I'm going to say this, and it's not going to probably happen, but I think Miami can beat Ohio State. I think if it's the Miami team that started the season that everybody said, They're big up front. They're physical on the old offense and defensive lines. If you get the Carson Beck that's played well here down the stretch, I think Miami can beat anybody. But then I say that, and it's like, A&M's really good too, but I haven't really seen a lot of A&M. A&M's -4 in this game. I'm going to go with the upset. If you want to call it the 10/7, I'm going to take Miami in this one. I think Miami beats them by a touchdown or better, C-Bus.
Wow. So I'm going to go. I actually I don't disagree with you. I think Miami's raw talent is great. I even told you guys one of my surprise teams because I thought they could have folded like they normally do, and I thought they held it. I thought they held it together, and they got rewarded for getting into the playoff. With that being said, I think A&M is really good. It's kind of funny. 3 weeks ago, I told a buddy the team I don't want Ohio State to have to play is A&M, and that's who I think we're probably going to have to face up against. I think A&M was beat up. I think they were physically just worn down by the end of the season. So I think having that extra week will be beneficial for them, especially at quarterback, especially at the line of scrimmage. To me, Rock, my big thing on Miami is I don't trust anybody in the ACC. I don't think anybody in the ACC was worth a damn this year. So yes, 10-2, that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, that's to me it's a 10-2 in a cupcake conference. I just don't think anybody was worth salt. While I think the SEC is always perpetually a little bit overrated, I still think they have a lot of good teams in that conference. So I'm going to take A&M here. And I don't think it's going to be overly close. Give me A&M 31-21 in a runaway.
Okay. Jake, how about you?
I'm going to go with Miami. I think coming down with both quarterbacks, I have more trust in Beck being there, done in that, the playoff system and everything, where the Reed kid has had a great year, but this is going to be his first time in this type of spotlight and everything. And, Miami has that big boys up front, one of the better D lines, and having a good week off and, or a good time off. Everyone's getting healthy. Where Texas A&M almost, I know they might have been banged up, but they were only scoring, low game. They had to battle with South Carolina. They were giving up points on their defense. They were still scoring, where Miami was playing both sides of the ball, shut down and spreading the ball around. Now, I think it's really going to come down to Beck not turning over the ball. I think I heard a stat today is when he has 2 or more picks, they're like 1 or 0. They don't have many wins when he throws that pick. When he only has 1 to 0, they have an incredible record. So I think it's going to come down to him, and I think he'll be able to step up and show that he's been here before and done that.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree that's all going to come down to the right arm of how well Carson Beck can make plays late in that game. So we'll see. All right, this game again, they played already. Ole Miss is a 17.5-point favorite in this game. First game without Lane Kiffin. Pete Golden gets his opportunity at home. Tulane's been a great story, but Coach Summerall's off to the University of Florida. I'll say I like Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to cover the 17.5, C-Bus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this might be one where we look at halftime and go, ooh, a little bit closer than we think. And then I think Ole Miss just, there's just too much depth there, right? Like we talk about, this isn't college basketball. As much as we love the Cinderella, we love the upset of March Madness. College football, like you said, Rock, it's just a different beast. Too much talent, too much depth. I think Tulane, like I said, comes out hungry early. Ultimately, Ole Miss puts them back in their place. I think Ole Miss covers too. Give me like a 38. Give me like a 38-17, 38-20 game, something like that.
Jake, you rolling with Ole Miss too? You like them to cover?
Go on Ole Miss. I think they'll cover. I mean, it definitely helps that both coordinators are still there at Ole Miss. I mean, I know Lane had a lot to do with the calling the plays and everything, but with them getting Wise back for the playoff run, I think that makes a huge boost. I just think it's funny that the Tulane quarterback he came from BYU and BYU's out and now he's in. Even though the BYU quarterback looked pretty good all season, but he kind of has the last laugh. But I don't see it really being a game like C-Bus says. It might be close during half because it's, feeling things out. But I think by the end of the game, 21-point victory easily.
And that's also, too, like those Ole Miss kids, they feel some type of way about their head coach leaving them. right? It's the playoff. Not that you're going to have any trouble getting these kids' attention, but I think
Different
there is a
voice,
little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of juice there coming from that program. Those kids feel some type of way about their coach leaving them at the biggest game of the biggest time of the season. So I can't see Tulane overcoming that monster. That'd be crazy to me.
Well, if you guys remember, before we get into this Oregon game, but if you guys remember, I mean, when Ole Miss played Georgia, Ole Miss was leading 95% of that game. Like, Georgia couldn't stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, Ole Miss gets by this game. I think they can beat Georgia. Like, I really thought that Ole Miss can make a really deep run in this thing, because I do think they're good. They can run the ball. Trinidad Chambliss, the quarterback, can make plays. So we'll see how that plays out for Ole Miss. But I agree with this, C-Buzz. I think Ole Miss has got a different moxie to him going in without Lane Kiffin, with a little bit more to prove now, without him. So we'll see how that plays out for Ole Miss. But this is the other big one. Oregon's a 21.5-point favorite. The winner will get Texas Tech in this game. I feel like if Oregon, when they win, no knock to JMU, but when they win, that Oregon Texas Tech is like an 8-9 game. Like, I don't know who to pick, because I think Texas Tech is really good, and I think Oregon's got a team that not many people are really talking about that I think can win the whole thing too. I do think they cover. I think they hammer JMU. C-Bus. I mean, does JMU keep it within the 21?
I can't see it. I mean, and then let's add into the plate that going to play in Oregon in Eugene is a ridiculously tough draw. On top of that, right? Yeah, we talked on the group chat, right? On the group text string. I'm a believer that if Oregon can find a way to control the line of scrimmage, they can beat anybody in the country. And I think let's see if they can do it, but they're not going to have an issue pushing JMU around the field. Dante Moore has just gotten better, I think, as the season has progressed. I worry a little about them on defense as we're talking long term into the playoff. But for JMU, no issue. I think Oregon big covers the 21. And I think, I think that the Texas Tech game is definitely one that I have circled of going. That's going to be must-see TV.
Jake, they cover the 21?
Yeah, they cover it easily. Now, the only thing is what Cinetti always, takes the transfer portal from JMU. He has a ton of players on the Indiana team that are stepping up. So maybe he knows a little secret, there that's where he goes shopping on it. But I don't see it being close. It's going to be 21. It's going to be a blowout. I think early enough that even by the first quarter, that's going to be a blowout. And then it's just going to be trying to prevent people from getting hurt in that game. So,
it feels like a sleepy week 3, like of the regular season game, right? Like that's what it feels like to me. Is like, oh, okay, who do we got after this game, right? Like that's just what it feels like to me. And no disrespect to JMU, I think great program, but
yeah, that's the hard part, letting them in. And it's like, man, and the one team you did play, that's what the Power 4 conference, you got blown up by Louisville, and it's like, and it's a great story and everything, but when we're talking about college playoff, the top 12 teams, it's hard to have them in that conversation at all.
Agreed.
So, guys, I want to finish up real fast here with you guys and see the Heisman finalists were revealed for this week. You got Mendoza, you got C-Bus, your guy, Julian Sane, you got Jeremiah Love, the running back, and you got Diego Pavier, the quarterback from Vandy's in there. Any predictions, guys, on who wins it? Is it Mendoza's to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I think history tells us they're going to go quarterback. I think Jeremiah Love is one of the better backs that I've seen in quite a while. I love the way that guy runs the football. His center of gravity, his lateral movement and burst to the hole. He reminds me, I'm a Browns fan, as you guys know, reminds me of like a Nick Chubb-esque type back. So I'm a big fan of Jeremiah Love. I'm kind of gutted that, this is where I wish Notre Dame had a damn conference championship, because I would have liked to see him be able to make a closing statement. But I think it's Mendoza. He had two whatever we want to call those Heisman moments, right? I don't know how you define those, right? But the win against Penn State on the last throw, And then, like we talked about, 2 clutch throws in the fourth quarter, or late in the third, and then fourth quarter to Ohio State. I think that's enough. I think that's enough of a statement. I think if Sayan had thrown for 3 touchdowns and wins that game, I think I might be telling you otherwise. But I think it's Mendoza's to lose.
Jake, you rolling with him too to win it?
No, I'm actually going to go with Diego. I think after people kind of watched that championship game, that those two were I think those two canceled each other out because they kind of almost played together. And, with Diego playing on a lesser team, with not having talent on both ends and still throwing for over 3,000 yards, over 25 touchdowns and almost having the same stats as those guys, but with less talent around them and making a big splash in the SEC and being almost right there as a Vanderbilt. So I'm going to go, I think Diego was going to sneak in there.
I like how you said the canceling out between Mendoza and Sain, because I have written down here their numbers, and Fernando threw for 2,900 yards. Julian threw for 3,300 C-Bus, 31 touchdowns to 33 to Mendoza. They both threw 6 picks. Julian Sain completed 78% of his balls. Mendoza 71.5. I agree with you, C-Bus. You had the Penn State game that Mendoza carried them and threw the game-winning touchdown pass. And I think if you take away the touchdown or the big fourth down, or I don't know, was it the third down and long throw for Mendoza in that game against Ohio State, I thought they both played pretty well. I thought Julian Sain played really well, well enough to win that game. I think Diego's probably the most electric player in the country. Threw for over 3,000, rushed for almost 1,000 yards, had 9 touchdowns on the ground. This is probably going to be one of the closer Heisman races I think we've seen in a long time, because I think any one of these 4 can win it. I think Love can win it. I think he's by far the best back, and I would have loved to seen him run in the playoffs, because I think Notre Dame can stop the run. I think they can run the football, and I think that's a recipe to win a national championship. But, we won't get to see it. If I had to throw money on this thing, I think people will go with Mendoza because he's on the best team in the country right now, and we saw him on the big stage against Ohio State. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to go the other way and vote Pavia. So I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to roll with Mendoza. I just think it's been one of those years for Indiana where they win all the awards, and we'll see. I still don't know if they're going to win the national championship. We're not going to pick it that far, but I think I'd probably say they'll give it to Mendoza. But if any of these guys win it, I wouldn't be surprised if anybody's name was called to say, "Oh, I'm surprised that he won it." So
I think Diego's personality. I think Diego's personality hurts. I don't know if he's. I think voters. There's enough voters that he's going to rub the wrong way.
The old voters.
Yep. I was just going to say. We all know there's a lot of old.
I think he's like the Johnny Manziel, right? I think he's like Johnny Manziel.
But it took Johnny to slay like 3. They had to slay 3 SEC giants, including that Bama game, for him to make that case. And I just don't think that resume is deep enough. And Rock, I'll go with you too, right? It's the Indiana story this year, right? That's been the story. It's, oh my gosh, they're number 2, now they're number 1. I mean, I just think there's too much momentum there.
Yeah, no, I would agree for sure. So, all right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate it. We're up against the clock. I think we're out of time, but always good to talk some college football. And I didn't, knock on wood, I didn't have any technical difficulties tonight. It was pretty smooth and clear. So we'll watch some football here over the next week. We'll do it again soon, and we'll see who we got picked to win the national championship here over the next couple of weeks. So I appreciate it, guys.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us on.
You got it. So it's always a good time talking college football with C-Bus and Coach DeCola, and having him on tonight to talk through the crazy Sharon Moore thing at Michigan. We'll see who's the next Michigan coach, see how the school handles that, and then the playoffs coming up here over the next 2 weeks. Who got in, who was left out, these games and picks and all that. The Heisman Trophy winner this week. We'll see who's awarded the Heisman Trophy. Any of these guys can win it. They're all really good players. So. But I want to thank Coach DeCola. Thanks, C-Bus, for jumping on here tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I'll let you guys know when the next College Football Unfiltered will be. So thanks for tuning tonight to The Rock Pile. The Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody.